Hi, friends. Hello, the world. Welcome back to this episode of Complaint Free Life. And your host, Asel from Lviv, Ukraine. So, I will be recording this beforehand because usually I record it on Fridays, but I will be doing that today, Wednesday, because Friday I'm traveling to back to Italy. So that's why I decided to do this in advance. So the topic that I want to talk to you today is probably one of the main reasons why we came to become humanitarians, and one of the reasons why we're also leaving the humanitarian world. And that topic is saving the world. Now, I know that when you hear me say save the world, you may have this like irritating or whatever the reaction, probably negative, I'm assuming, that may come up, and that's okay. But what I really essentially mean under the saving the world title is how or why we came to become humanitarians, why we wanted to become humanitarians at some point. For most of us is because we wanted to contribute. We wanted to change the world in some good ways. We wanted to do good things in the world, right? So that's all under the title of saving the world. And at some point, it used to be a very popular term. Now it's more used like a I don't know, something very negative and no one needs saving. And I totally understand and agree with that. But what I really wanted to talk to you today in this episode is let us define our impact, let us define our contribution, and let us be intentional about it. So that the reason, the motives, or the motivation for which we join the humanitarian world at some point also does not become the motivation for why we leave it, or motivation or the source of frustrations, source of disappointment. So, what I have noticed and observed from my own experience, and I have also seen many other humanitarians, is that when we entered the humanitarian world, I think most of our imagination or expectation was something like, definitely, there will be so many things we can change and do better, help so many humans from suffering, somehow alleviating their pain. Uh, Help them change their lives in the profound ways that they will lead better lives, right? So I think this is how we expected when we entered the humanitarian world. And many of us probably have also seen that possible. We have also seen that possible. We have been part of that possibility. We have contributed to making that possible. But we have also seen other constraints in the workspace, other challenges in the workspace, be it systematic challenges, be it because of the government, be it because of the security situation, be it because of the bureaucratic situations, right? So, because of many, many constraints that we have also seen all of what we expected not happening, or happening in a very small scale, that we became then disappointed, we became disillusioned, we became frustrated, right? I'm not saying all of us, but I know also many of us who have done it, who have experienced that as well. What I have then observed is that oftentimes when that disappointment happens, when that frustration happens, we oftentimes don't really process that. We don't really then redefine how we want to contribute, redefine how we really want to show up in that space, or how we want to do that somewhere else. We don't really work on that, but rather we keep struggling with those frustrations, rather we keep struggling with those disappointments. And then those disappointments then lead us to be always critical, always judgmental, always in disbelief of what we're doing. And that, I think, has like the counter um, effect for anyone involved, right? So, and if we don't want to be in that space, then it's high time that we have all defined for ourselves what we mean now in our life where we are at. when we say we want to contribute, when we say we want to do good in the world, when we say we want to make a change. What do we mean by that and how we want to do that? And this is what I would love to talk about. The reason why I started thinking about it more and more was because of two reasons, which I think is so important that I talk about. Is one is that I was talking to one of my clients recently, and she was talking about how she wants to live and what activities she wants to do. She wants to develop her painting skills and paint in so many different ways. And doing her courses on painting and all of these things and restorations and all of this. And then she was also saying that, well, all of this, however, does not really make sense because what really makes sense is saving the world, right? I mean, whatever the version of it. And we were very curious about what that meant because she always assumed that whatever she can do for herself would be considered selfish and not worthwhile doing it, even though she really wants to do that. But whenever she's sacrificing for other people and throwing her life, so to say, to be useful for other people, then it's worthwhile doing it. And this is when I asked her or tasked her to think about what she really means by saving the world and where that desire is coming from. Because oftentimes I think we have that desire to save the world so that we can feel good about ourselves, so that we can prove how great we are, how heroic we are, or how whatever the thing that we're wanting to believe, we are wanting to do that through that work. But I just want to encourage you to also to think about, is that the, I don't know, is that the worthwhile reason for doing it, right? Is that really the way to make change in the world, to make the contribution in the world? Because I would love for all of us to make the changes in the world, to make our contributions out of love for ourselves and for other people, out of um, genuinely wanting to make things better in the world, and not because we want to use that to feel good about ourselves or to um, prove how great we are or to prove that we can do this or whatever the things, right? Because I feel like then we're just using it for our own, in some ways, egoistical um, reasoning rather than we genuinely like wholeheartedly wanting to do good in the world. So that's why I really wanted my client to be thinking about what she means by saving the world in her case and how she would like to do that. And of course, she can do that. It's just that I want her to do that out of this clean space of genuinely wanting to be there for other people without having to sacrifice, without having to throw her own life to be doing that, so that there are no costs involved um, in terms of her own sacrificing. There are no like sacrificing costs involved in doing that contribution, right? So this was the first reason. And the other reason was that I was remembering recently that when we are choosing donors in the humanitarian setting, at least for some UN organizations, I know this to be true, is that when you select a donor, meaning that when you decide to take their money, there is certain safeguards in place of what kind of donor that is, right? Meaning that where they're getting their money from, that it cannot be the money cannot be from illegal means, money cannot be from weapons, this type of thing, especially when we work with private donors, for instance. Even though when we work with government donors, it seems like there are no criteria really. I'm not sure completely because we know that we are getting money also from some of the countries who are starting wars or who are exporting weapons, who are contributing to the war, but still we're getting money from it. But that could be another topic altogether. But the reason why I mentioned this of we seem to have the criteria for how we want to um, get our money, or where we want to get our money to help for the good causes, because we want to be clean, we want to be genuine, we want to be getting the money from rightly sourced, right? Places. We want to use the money for good causes. So therefore, we also want money that is not tainted, in other words, right? So this is how we see this, at least in some of the UN organizations that I know. And that's a great, I think, um, idea, principle, because of which we're doing it. However, what I see often that is happening then is that once we get the money, then how we spend it, how we deliver it to the people, not always um, we're doing it in the way that we really would love to do that. And the way that I'm thinking about is that yes, we have the money, yes, we have the resources, and yes, we have the people who we want to help, but getting that help seems to cost a lot of nerves, a lot of meetings, a lot of resources that could be spared, a lot of unnecessary suffering, in other words. And this is where I would love to come back to the saving the world motivation, right? So I would love for all of us to be clear as to how we want to contribute, how we want to deliver that help to those people that we want to, and how we can do that in the most less costing way, not only in terms of money, but not costing a lot of all of our sacrifices, not costing our nerves, not costing unnecessary, I don't know, discussions after discussions. And without all of that, delivering the money or delivering the help and delivering it in the way that we envision, each of us individually, delivering it in that way. And therefore, I find that saving the world, or whatever the way, however the way that you think for yourself in terms of your own contribution, in terms of how you want to create the impact, I really wanted to help you with some of the tools for you to consider defining what that is like for you, and whether you are able to do that currently in the setting where you are, and if not, um, how else could you do that so that you can create that impact, you can create that contribution, you can create that legacy for yourself. Excuse me. So I would love to share my way of how I have come to realize for myself what I mean when I say saving the world, right, in quotes. And I would love for you to consider for yourself how you define it. So, the way that I have come to realize it in the beginning of my career in the humanitarian world, saving the world was that contribution in big ways, contribution in the massive way, so that I can work on systematic issues. I can work on not only one-time assistance or emergency assistance, but also following that emergency assistance, doing some kind of systemic changes so that people continue suffering less or not suffering at all, and continue having good life. This is the idea of saving the world that I had in mind. And I have tried to contribute in my own way in the settings that was available at the time in my career. However, what I have realized though for myself individually is that that's not really how I find contributing effectively looks like for me. And this was also one of the reasons why I left the humanitarian world, is because I wanted to contribute to changes in the way that's sustainable. I wanted to contribute to changes in a way that does not cost myself anything and does not cost the person anything, in terms of like expectations, or in terms of nerves, in terms of all the sacrifices or whatever the things. that it doesn't cost any of that. And I also wanted to help people who really want to work with me in partnership, in equal partnership, rather than me being in the heroic status and then being in the recipient status, right? And I really wanted to do that contribution in the way that I do my part of the contribution and that person do their part of the contribution, and then we both can create something amazing for that person, through which the person's life will be changed to the better a lot more than she or he could have imagined in their lives, right? So this is how I wanted the contribution to be. So in other words, my contribution that I wanted to revolutionize for my own circle is working with people who love working with me, working with them towards a common goal, to them being example of what's possible in the world by believing in themselves, trusting in themselves, working towards their unbelievable goals, and then achieving them, and then showing that not only they can do it, anyone can do it as well. This is how I want my contribution to be, and this through these individual contribution that I make, and then I'm also turning to groups through these groups as well, that I want to contribute to revolutionizing the humanitarian world in the way that we no longer normalize overworking or overwhelm or stressful situations or unnecessary suffering. We no longer tolerate that. We speak up about it. We set our boundaries about it. We know exactly how we want to contribute and which way we want to do that impact. And we also measure and see if it's working or not, and are very honest with ourselves that if it's not working, that we find other ways to deliver that assistance, so that we are no longer normalizing either you can help in this setting, and if you can't, you just I guess we no longer normalize unnecessary suffering, right? This is what I'm really getting at, is that the revolution that I really want to contribute to in the humanitarian world is to not be saving the world because we want to prove something, or because we want to be heroic, or we want to be showing how sacrificing we are, but rather we are doing it, we're contributing it because we really truly believe that's the world we want to live in. That's how we want to create our impact. That's how we want to create our legacy. That's how we want to contribute to our growth together. And that's why my way of defining this contribution is like fueling me, is contributing to how I feel, contributing to why what I'm doing makes sense and how I'm doing it, trying to always find new ways to explore how to do that, how to create that impact, how to do that in a way that it's not really about the numbers, but rather it's about the changes that's happening, the ripple effect of those changes to those people who are around the people that I'm interacting with. So this is how I would love to create my impact. This is how I would love to contribute my way. And when I think about this way, when I think about making the contribution to people's lives who really want that contribution, who want to also work towards that contribution with their own contribution to create amazing results. This is how I see my impact to be. And that for me makes sense. And that for me is my true way of creating my legacy, a true way of creating my change in the world, the change that I want to see in the world. And I no longer want to spend that time and energy on things that I have no control over, or things that I don't see the point of changing, or things that I don't even believe that need be changed. So I don't really want to also keep that disappointed, excuse me, disappointed, deeply disillusioned um, views, and keep that while I'm working on something else. I don't want to have any of that, right? So I don't want to be in that situation where I am changing my own experience through my own disappointments and disillusionments, instead of deciding what I'm going to do about it, how am I going to change that, and how am I going to focus on the change that I really want to make in the smallest but surest ways possible, so that I create the changes within myself that I want to see, and I want to create those changes with other people who want to see changes in themselves. So, in other words, I don't want to be saving anyone. No one needs saving. If anything, I need to be saving myself from my own, whatever the dramas, whatever the heroic actions that I may want to be doing, and I need to clean that up. And I come to the table not with the saving mindset, which sounds like very undermining of nature, but rather I come to the table with my people in the contributing mindset of partnership, where how we both can do things to change, how we both can do things in the way that we want to see those changes happening within ourselves and around ourselves, right? So that's why I have given you my example of how I see the saving the world definition for myself, how I have been applying it, using it in my own life, and how I would love for you to consider how you see that contribution for yourself. How do you see the uh, that change that you want to see? How do you want to create your legacy, your impact? How do you want to do that where you really receive fulfillment from doing it? You really receive energy and even more motivation to go big and do your contribution, so that you're not busy cleaning up disappointment or being in disappointment or frustration, but rather you then become part of contributing to solutions and contributing to new ways of finding answers to questions that we're looking for. Okay, my dears, I hope that this was helpful to share my experience of how I see it, and I would love to hear your experience of how you see it, how you want to define for yourself, how you want to create the impact that you're wanting in the way that you want to, so that we can all create that better world that we're all wanting. Have an amazing weekend and see you next week.